We come to you with a special podcast this morning here from the Tysons area in Northern Virginia. I'm Seth Berensweig here in our BLC Digital Studios. I would like to welcome back our special guest, Yossi Levy. Yossi, welcome back to the studio.
Thank you.
Sometimes you're here live, sometimes you are abroad. By way of a quick reintroduction, Yossi's background is very vast and extensive. He is a former commander in the IDF. He has worked with agencies in Israel in the intel community. He is an executive, a CEO, running a business engaged in security, has an operation here on the based on the East Coast here in the United States and also in Israel. Part of their work in Israel is related to infrastructure support for CENTCOM. He is, last but not least, also a dad and a husband, and we'll talk about the personal perspective as well. Yossi, welcome back, and just before we start to get into some graphics, tell us how you are doing and the latest of your experiences. You've been in the United States, and you're basically on tour, is that correct?
Yes, so thank you again for having me this time in person here. It's always nice to be back here. So as you mentioned, yes, first of all, we are all well. God bless us and our entire community. And yeah, as you mentioned, we decided a couple months ago to come on a sort of a journey to the U.S., the whole family, my wife and our three beautiful kids, and we are here, and we are trying to educate people, to speak about our journey, to make people more understandable and aware of what's happening in the northern region. And as you can see, rapidly it's been developing lately, but that's our mission, and we hope and look to continue it throughout the United States as extensive as possible.
That's great. Well, your arrival here is not only important but well timed. So I think the best way to get started is to go ahead and let's roll some video. Can you describe that video for us? Yeah. Very powerful, obviously.
First of all, I think that it's crazy. You imagine somebody driving in the car, afternoon, after work, on his way home, and he see a rocket launcher, like literally launching 12...
Immediately to the right of his car.
Yes, launching 12 Iron Dome missiles. Right. It's like you'll drive here on the 495, and you'll see from the sidelines somebody launching rockets. This is crazy.
So that's Iron Dome.
That's Iron Dome. If that Iron Dome was launched, as we can see in this video here, it means that it was launched against target that was targeted towards the north. This is in the northern region. This is from yesterday. So as you can see, Seth, over 100, 200 missiles were targeted towards the extended northern part of Israel yesterday alone. And when you see an Iron Dome, like you saw in this frame, that's the launching towards the targets. And it's just the routine, the day-to-day life, and we have more examples for that.
Wow. Let's roll the next.
פלג, תראי מה קורה פה.
What are we seeing in that video?
So in this video, we see the continuation of the path of the Iron Dome towards its targets. It's been taken from a different location, actually from a different city as well. And in this picture, what we can see is the impact moment where it hits the targets and eliminate them. But you can see the amount. You can see how the radius is tight. It means that it was launched from the same launcher, an amount of missiles towards Israel, and the Iron Dome target each and every one of them, and they just explode midair above cities, about populated areas. Just amazing.
Next video, please. was depicted in that video?
The difference, this one is from 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
It's a 4 a.m. shot. It was taken by a good friend of ours that basically placed the camera on his rooftop, and he's constantly just videoing the incidents as they occur. It comes to show again that it's from many different places around the region, and there's no time for it. It's 24/7. It's a reality that people needs to live in.
And to be clear, this is happening when missiles are launched into civilian areas in Israel, and then the Iron Dome is activated to try to intercept and explode the incoming missiles.
Yes, we are in the point where Hezbollah is not necessarily targeting strategic assets, army bases, refineries, military industries. He can, if he wants from his perspective to boost the morale of his people, he will present it as such. But at the end of the day, it's populated civil areas that they're targeting.
Well, to now set the stage geographically, I think we have a pretty powerful map that we'd like to put up that really sets the table and puts things into geopolitical perspective. So let's take a look at that. Yossi, can you walk us through this?
Yeah, so what we see in this picture, we see our very disturbing, crazy neighborhood that we live in, where we are located at. You can see the tiny Israel in blue and white, surrounded by a vast, complete majority of Muslim countries. We have Lebanon on the north of us. We have Syria surrounding us from the east. We have behind Syria, we have the Republic Islamic Iran. We have the Iraqis and their Iraqi militias. We have at the bottom right-hand side the Yemens and the Houthi militias. We have the Jordanian kingdom. We have the Egyptians. And you can barely see here, but Gaza is also there. And you don't see here, but the West Bank is also there. So basically, you see about 7 frontiers that we deal with.
When you say 7 frontiers, it's a 7-front war?
I think in a sense, yes. Yes, although that Israel has a peace treaty agreement with the Jordanian, we have some problems from that side of the border, and it's raising concerns just due to the vast majority of Palestinians that live in Jordan. We have our issues with the Egyptians over how are we handling Gaza. It obviously raises problems, and we don't see things eye to eye, and it's hard to negotiate. And they have also a common border with Gaza as well, around the Rafah area and the Philadelphia corridor. So that's again another issue we need to deal with, and who's managing that or basically controlling is, the Iranian, who basically developed through many years this regional proxy, and everything is a tool for them. The Jordanian are a tool for them. The West Bank is a tool for them. Syria, Iraq, the Houthim, Lebanon, obviously. So that's a big problem to face.
Before we lead into Lebanon, provide for us an update to the extent that you can. And I know that some of the intel that you're aware of includes some things that you're unable to discuss. But to the extent that you can share with them, help us understand what has happened over the week prior to this broadcast. Before we lead into, of course, how this leads us directly into Lebanon, what is the latest status? And of course, there's been many developments over the past several days, including the pager attack.
Right. So I think that the pager attack is what changed the paradigm. And it was a very, very successful act. The bottom line was successful from the Israeli perspective. The pager attack was a process conducted through many years where we developed capabilities to basically implement and have access to thousands of pagers in Lebanon, Syria, and other places. And we implanted some sort of a device within them. And we planned to use that to our advantage when needed. I'll say that I'm not sure that when we detonated them, that was when we were needed to. But bottom line, it's what happened as a result of maybe some sort of interference with our process of covering this operation, and it ignited slowly an escalation process that in that case, Israel was the one that took the upper hand and engaged that and escalating the war daily into the situation where we are at today.
Just as we were caught off guard, just as the people of Israel were caught off guard with October 7th, what kind of a surprise impact, what kind of a change in the situation was impacted upon Nasrallah? And we'll talk more about the elimination of the leadership. But what impact do you think that, from that perspective, it had on him?
I think that it was maybe in a sense similar to us prior to October 7th. He was under the conception that since that we are a very, very moral state and we care about life and we care about human life, we will not, I will say, we will not challenge him in the sense that we will push him to extend the distance, go to bigger missiles, go to cruise missiles, and we will stay below that threshold. And I think that he found himself surprised. In that sense, we were able to gain our element of surprise with how aggressive Israel decided to attack when we actually made the decision to attack, and we launched Operation North Arrows.
Okay, so that now brings us directly into Lebanon. So I think that we have some graphics here. Well, walk us through this.
So what we see in this map is basically we see Lebanon. Lebanon is, I don't know, the size of, somebody said here earlier, New Jersey perhaps, or some small state in the U.S. Below it, you see Israel with the arrow, black arrow at the bottom of the frame. So along the red line at the bottom, that's basically our border with Lebanon. And you see that we have here, Seth, about 5 different areas. Within the red or pink area, we have 3 separate areas, and then on the blue area on the east, it's also divided with a red line. And this is basically how we are escalating and increasing and extending the Israeli attack on Lebanon since the last week. That's how gradually we have extended it. We started with the areas in the pink. Meanwhile, we went to the lower part of the yellow valley of Lebanon, and now we are already attacking in the Baalbek area, which is about 100 kilometers from Israel. While doing that, we always do very, very, and that's an important key, surgical operations in Beirut, where the yellow dots are in the Dahya corridors, which is basically held by Hezbollah. And we've been very successful there.
Explain to us, while we're still looking at the map, where have the launchers been located, and approximately what level of destruction over the last week or so of those launchers has the IDF been able to achieve?
So first of all, the vast majority of the launchers are within the purple area. It's a more close proximity to Israel. They are able to launch it from there and use the shorter distance to get deeper into Israel. And let's say always that Tel Aviv is a sweet spot for all our enemies, and they want to try to accomplish and get there, or maybe get to the more eastern side of Israel with some strategic targets like around the Golani interjunction, or some military bases around that area. So that this is the area where the most rockets being fired from. Now, as opposed to 2006, they took the Hezbollah approach and they started to hit their long cruise missiles within houses. The DR-3s, they hide them in houses, they hide them in civil population.
They being Hezbollah, of course.
Hezbollah, 110%. In the yellow part of the map, this is more where they receive those ammunitions from, because that's the upper northern side of Syria, and the shipments from Iran can better and easily go from there into Lebanon, even though that we're doing a significant job in eliminating those convoys and whenever they reach.
Got it. Okay, we can take that map down just for a moment, and we have more to cover on the screen in a second, but there have been reports, perhaps not accurate, but reports, or maybe we can say incomplete reports, about the bombing of neighborhoods, the bombing of houses in Lebanon. You were talking about missiles targeted in certain neighborhoods. Can you explain more for us what evidence, if any, shows the targeted nature of those strikes in those neighborhoods, and what, if anything, Israel did in terms of advance warning to the civilian population?
So first of all, when we decided to increase and extend the level of attacks in Lebanon, Israel directly addressed the southern Lebanon population and asked them to be evacuated and to move further north. On the first day, about 500,000 people evacuated. When Israel designated a target, if it's in a civil area, since Israel operates under the law of the war, there are evidence to it, and they prove it, and they show it, and they indicate it. The targets need to be valid. We need to have as slim to none collateral damage as possible. It's obviously depending on the value of the target. If it's to eliminate a missile, but I might hit a kindergarten, I'm not sure this decision will be taken. I can even say that I'm sure it will not be taken. But if the target is of a higher value, as we will see shortly, then the decision-making process is differently. Obviously, there are very, very knowledgeable and senior individuals in the space that will make this decision. I can tell you it's not an army decision. The army present a bank of targets to the senior administration and the cabinet. They make the decision on the go, no-go in such cases.
And I will note that one of the lead professors here in the United States at West Point, who is a professor of military history, has noted the statistics that the IDF has achieved one of the lowest ratios of non-combatant deaths in the modern history of military warfare. But moving along, let's go to another graph that talks about the impact as it relates to Hezbollah. Walk us through this.
So before we walk into this one, I'll just say that it was just confirmed that Ibrahim Kadisi, the head of the missile division for the Hezbollah, was eliminated about an hour ago in another surgical operation in a house in the Dahya corridor in Beirut. Again, we're not targeting the Dahya corridor as a corridor. It's not 2006.
These people are not staying in military bases. They're ensconcing themselves in the midst of human shields.
100%.
Okay.
It's an apartment building, and they use the human as cover. Right. That's how it's been. But still, it's important to understand the definition. We're not bombing we're not destroying the Dahya corridor.
Got it.
Because the equivalent of Dahya from the Hezbollah perspective is Tel Aviv. We're doing a very surgical operations that the target and the purpose is to eliminate the threat. The threat are those individuals we see on the map.
So walk us through this.
So what we see in the map is basically, first of all, it's an exceptional understanding and of the level of intelligence that Israel through the years gathered on the leadership of Hezbollah. There is the high jihadi command, which is Ibrahim Akil, Fuad Shukr, and Ali Karaki. Ali Karaki was injured just yesterday. We understand he was not eliminated, but he will be at some point. And the lower is just the senior command. And during the Ibrahim Akil elimination earlier at the end of last week, we were actually able, along with him, to kill about 13 of his other senior leadership and commanders. This is a direct result, by the way, of the beeper incidents, because the understand that there's no other safer way for them to communicate
Right.
than meeting and standing face to face and speak directly. They take the risks that maybe they were not willing to take prior. But this only shows the level of intelligence that we have, the level of accessibility to knowledge, our sources, our human sources, our intelligence sources. But what it's also indicating that we have decided in this attack to really change our approach. And we are relentless, we're showing extensive force, and in comparison to 2006, where Israel eliminated just one of the senior leadership of the army of Hezbollah, in this war, we kind of cleaned the table in a sense.
So Karaki was hit, but has not yet been eliminated.
He's not confirmed dead. no.
Okay. So we can take that graphic down. Now, the news is moving so quickly during the week that we're taping this that you just discussed the news that was breaking about an hour ago. As you and I are speaking, President Biden is speaking at the United Nations.
Right.
Talk to us about the approach of the United States and your views of that approach and how that plays into the big picture with regard to the current military situation.
So I think first of all, Israel approach has been throughout the year, we seek peace. And we're not seeking military actions. We seek peace. We want to come to terms with our neighbors, with our enemies. And in that sense, we do fall into the same understanding with the American administration. But I think that the American will for de-escalation in the region is to some extent not matching the reality we live in. Our people cannot be bombarded day and night, constantly for years. Go to the Gaza envelope and go to the northern region. We don't have an enemy that understand or seek peace. They seek annihilation. They want to destroy us. And if the United States, as an administration, are not expressing enough force within the region, it doesn't support us to reach this de-escalation. The de-escalation can be an end result, but first we have to make sure that our neighbors understand who is here to stay, and that's us. And in that sense, we have some sort of we have our issues with the current administration here. I don't know if that's the current administration or that's administration in general. But, the fact is that Iran feels more comfortable, that Iran launches a 300 missile and drone attack on Israel just 4 months ago. And we were asked also then to not respond back and not to retaliate. And what country in the world would not respond when they are attacked by their biggest enemy in the world, per se, from Israel perspective? I don't think that if I always use a simple demonstration. If San Antonio would be hit with missiles from Mexico, I'm sure
8,000 missiles.
Well, with the numbers in recent days, we are reaching 9,000 missiles. That's north alone, Seth. That's not including the south. That's the northern region. So take 1% of it. Take 90 missiles. Shoot them towards San Antonio, Dallas, Fort Worth. I think that you would have turned Mexico to a parking lot by now. So I think it's not fair to ask us to constantly, say, you know what? No, they don't spit on us. It's the rain. This approach cannot coexist, and I think that's where we found our conflict with the current administration.
I think one aspect to add to that hypothetical that you talked about, which is a very conservative version of 90 or 100 missiles being launched from Mexico into the United States, is, in addition to that, having terrorists from Mexico come in and kidnap what would be equal to the freshman class of the University of Texas, dragging them back, holding them in death dungeons, and then when we try to respond, people try to claim ceasefire, restraint. You can't do this. how would, if we were given that kind of feedback, we would think that that was absolutely crazy.
In a sense, yes. And some people do think that it's crazy. Obviously, the Israeli administration is not agreeing to this demand. We're constantly continuing. I think we have now like a fist fight. Who's going to decide to give up first, in a sense? We are stretching the limit of each other constantly. I think that, in a sense, the global leadership and the U.S. especially are kind of waiting for the Lebanese and Hezbollah to respond. I think that since that for Nasrallah, the public opinion of the Lebanese people, as opposed to the Hamas, and if you want to elaborate on that later, as opposed to Hamas, Nasrallah has a lot of empathy for the Lebanese. He needs their public opinion.
In other words, he relies upon the goodwill or the empathy incredibly enough from the indigenous Lebanese.
Not in the sense that they support him, but in the sense that he doesn't want to raise them against Hezbollah.
Right.
Remember, he's a party there.
Yes.
He's not a legitimate party, but he is a party there. He cares about the Lebanese people to some extent, unlike Hamas. And I think that what will be a trigger that we're trying not to reach is when we start to bomb again Beirut and more target Dahia in a much more less surgical perspectives. And that's something that we don't want to reach. And we hope that, in a sense, he will say, you know what, I think we understood the picture. Let's see what terms we can come to. Again, it's not a peace agreement. It's come to an understanding agreement.
Right.
But from an evacuee perspective, somebody that lives on the border and raises kids on the border, if the Radwan forces and the Hezbollah forces will not retrieve back past the Litani, I don't think we will be able to reach any sort of an agreement. And also then we will need to have a strong, reliable international force there to actually enforce that.
So we'll get to our concluding thoughts in a moment, because I want to talk about it, how this is impacting you and your family. But just to talk about a note that you said a second ago, you were referring to the Litani River, is that correct?
Yes.
So the United States Security Resolution 1701, among other things, required a roughly 18-mile buffer zone for the withdrawal and the backing up of the Hezbollah forces north of the border. They have gradually, over time, inched closer south.
Yes.
And so now the United Nations is not even enforcing its own UN Security Council resolution with regard to
The 1701.
1701.
It's not now. It's been degrading for years.
Right.
It's been 18 years since the Second Lebanese War, since 1701 resolution. And as the year progressed, Hezbollah increased his power, increased his presence within the southern side of Lebanon. In the villages there, a farmer that we see walking the sheeps, he is not a farmer. He's gathering intel.
Yeah.
There are no innocent people among the people there. A lot of them are not. And they have constantly challenged us. They challenge us with tents on the border. They challenge us by raising observation poles on the border, black, huge one. You see them when you drive in the north roads of Israel. You see them from a distance. That's how big they are.
Well, a military observation post staring into Israel, those are not sheep farmers, I would imagine.
These are not sheep farmers, and these are not even these are not UN observation points.
Right.
It means, we used to walk the trails around there, and you would see next to the UN posts, you would see the Hezbollah people just standing with them.
Yeah.
So obviously they are not in any way presenting or expressing any control over the situation.
Right.
And as the year progresses, we see how 1701 is not relevant anymore.
So let's conclude on a personal note. We started with those very powerful videos, and then we went into a specific military update as it related to the maps. But in conclusion, you're not only someone who is a businessman and someone who has been in the IDF, you're a husband, you're a dad, you are an evacuee from the north along with nearly 100,000 other Israelis as we sit here today. How has this impacted you and your family as you sit here today?
Well, first of all, it doesn't. It doesn't impact our family in the sense that it just... For us, we are continuing the path that we are on in the sense that we need to seek alternatives, that we need to maintain and stay outside of our homes.
You haven't been back to your house in what, 11 months? Yeah,
a year now. It will be a year in next week.
Do you still have to pay your mortgage and your utilities?
Our
and
life
your
goes
homeowners
on.
Association?
We need to pay our life debts regardless.
Right.
It's the fact that we don't live there doesn't mean that my insurance carrier doesn't want me to pay my home insurance.
Your bank is not giving you a special break, in other words.
In that sense, no.
Right.
The vast majority of our expenses continuing to happen as we are still away from our homes, and we need people to understand. Away from our home, it means that at least until the end of this school year, meaning July, September, if we will be done by then, and if we will come to terms, then will come the phase of the rehabilitation. Okay? Our schools is soldier dormitories. The Army operates from there. It's ruined. Infrastructures, our kindergartens are similar. Our gym, the public facilities, it will take time to rehabilitate. That's assuming that we're going to have the funding available to do that in the pace that we want to do that. I honestly, first of all, it's a good thing. It means that something is happening towards an end goal. That's a good sign.
Right.
From a time perspective, I'm not more optimistic today than I was 2 weeks ago, because we know and we have the evidence from the South to see that the processes are slow, they take time, there's a lot of bureaucracy, there are a lot of stumbles on the way, there are prioritization, there are funding allocation. These things take time, and the problem is that if it's going to be too long, you have to think about it. People make life and roots elsewhere. And then the question becomes, will we return or will we not return?
It's hard to remember here in the United States that between 80 and 90,000 evacuees are still displaced from their homes. They can't go back. They haven't gone back. As you mentioned in a speech the other night to one of the groups here in Washington, D.C., you and your wife and your children, within 5 minutes, you evacuated, you took a backpack, and you said, perhaps we'll be back in 72 hours. What, if for the viewers, if you had 5 minutes to pack something in a backpack and you had to leave in 5 minutes and you didn't know when you would be back, what would you put in your backpack? It's an unbelievable situation. There's a lot going on. There's so much more that we could cover. We will hopefully be able to have you back and tell us more about the situation. Yossi, thank you for coming to the United States, providing us an update here in the studio. We wish you and your family well, and we hopefully will talk to you again sometime soon.
Thank you, Seth. Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to be here, and I really hope and address the audience here. Follow us. If you want to have us as a guest in your communities to become more knowledgeable, to become more aware, please do that. We'll be more than happy to meet with you, sit with you, share with you the information. We're sure that you will be much more knowledgeable afterwards.
I would very much encourage our viewers to take a look at this final screen. Yossi has been very generous with his time. He has been speaking. His wife is also going to be speaking in the United States. As we speak, in a few hours, we will be at another location in Maryland tonight, speaking with a crowd of about 70 plus people. And there is a lot to be done, and there is still much ahead. So, Yossi, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.